In October of 2000, a series of more than 1,000 petition letters of concern were sent to Carol Browner as an indication of the significant citizen concern on the aerosol issue. In December of 2000, the EPA responded once again that they continued to remain unaware of any aerial application of chemical or biological substances that may have any adverse effect upon the population. In November of 1999, the Attorney General of New Mexico, Patricia Madrid, acknowledged multiple inquiries to her office regarding unusual aircraft operations. She declared that there is substantial evidence that the activity and contrails are well within the range of normal aerial activity. After issuing this notice, Attorney General Madrid declined to respond to 2 visits made to her office by Clifford Carnicom to discuss the aerosol issue. Also in November of 1999, the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency responded to a citizen by stating that they were unable to complete an investigation. Efforts have been made to involve the media in exposing the aerosol operations, including ABC News 2020 investigative journalism staff, who responded that the request for examination of the aerosol issue was not a topic that they would cover. Since the beginning of 1999, a series of more than 36 scientific methods have been used, most notably by Clifford Carnicom, to examine the dramatic alteration of the atmosphere that has taken place. These tests have been conducted with much labor, time and expense. They've been conducted with very limited resources and equipment, much of it requiring original construction, development or modification. What follows is only a partial overview of these sampling methods, which have been diverse and thorough, spanning more than 9 years. As far as is publicly known, the authorities have not attempted to replicate these tests, nor have they reacted to the results in any formal fashion. Therefore, the method has been primarily one of reverse engineering, to figure out what is being sprayed on us and why. These methods include meteorological studies, an examination of visibility standards and their reduction from a maximum of 40 to 10 miles. Studies of acid and alkalinity levels of rainfall across the country. Photographs and video showing emissions from aircraft which are in complete defiance of the conditions for any normal contrail formation. Direct observation with the naked eye of aerosols originating from the aircraft gathered by thousands of individuals around the world. High-efficiency particulate air filters, which have been used to directly filter the outdoor air in repeated tests. Extraordinary levels of particulate materials have been found, including the repeated presence of unusual filaments, a gel formation, crystals and powders. Electromagnetic devices which have been developed and used specifically for this research. Distilled rainwater samples to concentrate any solid materials or particulates. Observation of irregularities in normal radar activity. The tests reveal that as a result of the aerosol operations, samples of the atmosphere have been found to contain unusually high levels of the following. Metallic-based materials, a class of elements that have the property that they can become electrically charged with the energy from sunlight alone. One of the elements found in unusual and unexpected levels is barium. Unusual airborne filaments. Under a microscope, these fibers are seen to contain unusual biological components. Incredibly high mold counts are regularly found, surprisingly, even in the extremely dry environment of the high Southwest. Additionally, testing has produced a variety of indications that the atmosphere is regularly being used for electromagnetic applications which can have a very direct influence on the health of humans.
I have a degree in science, I have a doctorate in science, so I consider myself to be maybe not an expert in this particular thing, but I know how to look at things, and I learned a little bit about meteorology and the atmospheric conditions necessary for even a contrail to form and persist, much less ones that just dissipate, and found that there were no laws of physics that supported this activity or the explanation of this activity as a normal water vapor or frozen vapor trail. And so I came up with things like, well, all of a sudden, the jet goes overhead, and in the same sky, you'll see 2 or 3 jets passing overhead, and there's nothing. You can barely see the jets because they're so high up. And other jets come into an area, and all of a sudden, the white trail starts all of a sudden coming out of the jet, and then it stops, and then it starts again. And I've seen a number of occasions where they just did dashes across the sky. And I stops and starts. I talked to a few pilots, and I asked them, well, how can you do this? And they said, well, you can turn your engine off. I said, well, you do it over and over again? He says, if you're nuts. And I started noticing, especially by March of '99, April of '99, people were becoming very, very ill. At the time I was working in a healthcare facility, and I was seeing a lot of upper respiratory disease happen. And over the years, I've watched more and more people come down with asthma, and you can hear it. You go to the supermarket and you find children, children that are 2 and 3 years old, and you can hear them wheezing. You can hear rails in their chest. I mean, this is very unusual.
The following is a reenactment of a transcribed interview between Clifford Carnicom and Gwen Scott, naturopathic doctor and former CNN broadcaster, originally recorded in February of 2004.
You have a background in the world of journalism and specifically broadcast journalism. Can you talk a little bit about that background and also the relationship of the media to what is occurring?
Yes, well, you know that I was in broadcasting for 30 years. I worked for all 3 affiliated networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, and many of the larger markets, and I culminated my career as an anchor at CNN and Headline News. So I have, over the years, a lot of really good contacts in some pretty high places in the media. But I would imagine pretty much everybody watching this will know that there have been dramatic changes in the media. Who owns the media? The quality of human being attracted into the media. In other words, why are they there? When I started, it was mostly all print folk, and they kind of had to tell us, come on, clean up your act, this is visual. But people were coming from the old school of journalistic, afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. And you're the watchdog, and you go for that story, and you never accept the official version, and on and on and on. Most of the media and information we get now is owned by only 3 companies. When they deregulated, when the FCC deregulated, they allowed these huge, like AOL Time Warner, to gobble up. So you've got these large entities controlling all the information, whether it's film, radio. And yes, when this started, I called in every chip I ever had. I called a very good buddy at CNN who really assigned most of the stories. He was very high on the story, very interested. I sent him your website, a lot of your information. He was hi, yay, shut down. And I never did get an explanation. As you well know, I contacted some of our local media people. The main anchor on the local station wanted to do a story, we thought, and we shot a lot of video of the activity. In those days, it was very obvious. Now it's a little harder. You don't have the mornings when you have the deep blue sky and then the afternoon. Now you get the pale blue-white sky if you're lucky, and as you well know, that story never aired. USA Today, which is an international publication, did a story on it, but it was obviously with an agenda, basically poking fun at those goofy people who saw those things. I believe there was 1 or 2 credible people interviewed, but for the most part, the reporters started out with an agenda to sort of mock, or make fun of those people who were seeing things in the sky. And if I had a dime for everybody else that I called, wrote, or begged, I could at least buy an ice cream cone, to no avail, just hitting a wall.
And this was with all your connections?
This is with years of connections. It's unprecedented in my life, and I cannot name another story. People point to Watergate as this big watershed cover-up. I find that laughable. This, in my opinion, this is the biggest story. And I approach many of my colleagues this way. This is the biggest story in recorded human history. You have an entire planet now covered with whatever, by whoever, and nobody is even acknowledging it. What the heck is going on, and how come we don't know?
That is the question. What could explain that level of refusal?
Fear. Because the folks who get it, they're afraid. They know it's something bigger than them. They know all the possibilities of who's able to put planes in the sky, that many, every day, 24/7. It doesn't take a nuclear physicist to figure out that it's not the guy around the corner. This is big.
So even the journalist has that threshold that they're unwilling to cross.
Oh yeah, afraid. And the few that are left, who do catch on to it, say, wow, I want to do a story, like we were just discussing. They hit a wall somewhere, and I'm never told where it is. I don't know if it's the news manager, I don't know if it's the station manager, I don't know where. They hit that brick wall, and the story goes away.
Gwen Scott, naturopathic doctor.
Clifford, it's so good to be on tape in person with you on this subject. I know before we couldn't show my face, we couldn't hear my voice because I was under contractual agreement. But today, what I'd really like to talk about is the medicine end, which is my passion and my whole reason for being involved in this is to try to help people stay as well as they can stay given the givens. Never thought I'd live to be seeing these times. As you know, recently information was brought to us that's critical in terms of health. So I want to deal with that first, and then we can go back and talk about the other contents of this aerosol spray and the impact of the body, and perhaps some mitigating medicines. We have found out through a very credentialed research doctor that perhaps what we're seeing occasionally show up in our air supply is a fungus. The reason this is so critical is apparently this fungus dramatically compromises the immune system by consuming those nutrients the immune system uses to repair and rebuild. And like every system in our body, the immune system has to keep rebuilding itself. It will wear out, it will wear down, and it has to keep regenerating. If it doesn't have those nutritional tools to do that, your immune system becomes dramatically compromised, unable to deal with any kind of invader. That's why I think we're seeing so many more colds and flus than we've seen in the last 5.5, 6 years, than we've seen in a long time. I know in my clients, these things are like epidemic. Sinus infections, colds and flus, that's on the lighter side. On the heavier side, we're seeing a lot more cancers and some very devastating disease, implying an extremely compromised immune system. Part of that has to be this fungal kind of invasion because, as I said, this fungus eats the nutrients that the immune system uses to rebuild itself. I don't know if you know, one of the top respiratory specialists in the United States was recently on the Today Show. He's written a book called something about the breathing crisis in this country. And he told, I think it was Katie Couric, I don't recall, who was interviewing him, maybe Ann Curry, that death or mortality from respiratory disease had gone from number 8 5 years ago to almost number 3. That's huge. That means that the third leading cause of death now in this country is breathing. And one has to wonder what could have happened in 5 years to have created that kind of crisis, is the only word I can think of. So this is something that anybody who breathes, and I'm assuming that's anybody who might be seeing this documentary, needs to be concerned not only for themselves but everyone they love. This isn't like a firing squad where everybody goes down and you get to watch it at one time. This is a cumulative poisoning that will demonstrate in different people in different manners depending on how strong their immune system was to begin with, what their genetics are, and many other factors. So this is something that will demonstrate in a lot of different ways. You're not going to have, as I said, the firing squad effect, but what you will have is over time more and more debilitated people, more and more people who don't feel well, more and more younger people, which I'm seeing quite a bit of now, in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, with problems that we never saw in that age range, or rarely, I should say, saw. And I know in Albuquerque alone, 5, 6 years ago, 6 to 8% of the children were diagnosed as asthmatic.